So not everybody's gonna agree with me with this, but I think that Issa and Lawrence were bound to get back together from the very start. This Joanne here. I'm just making a video. I've been meaning to make videos for a very long time, and going through a whole bunch of other topics, I felt like, hey, this is something that I really want to do, especially because I tend to rant a lot on Instagram, on my Instagram stories, just trying to get certain topics off my head and express it to the public. So I thought, why not just reignite my YouTube video and my YouTube channel actually, and let's just get these videos out on the way. So I've been wanting to make videos about TV shows, particularly Insecure, for a very long time. I already started doing a season breakdown, and I felt like, man, if I try to do more of these, it's just going to take a whole bunch of work, because the first one that I have took so much time, and I thought, like, why not just focus on an overarching topic from the show and then just go from there. And so hopefully this will lead to a whole bunch of other videos now that I temporarily have some free time. Okay, so what is Insecure about? So Insecure chronicles the stories of Issa, Lawrence, and Molly, who are all in their late 20s, trying to navigate relationships, jobs, friendships with one another, and so on and so forth. Basically navigating your late 20s as a young Black millennial. I'm just gonna summarize what is like the main conflicts, I guess, or the main overarching conflict that I'm gonna be talking about in this video, which is the relationship between Issa and Lawrence. Okay, so coming off of season 1, we automatically get the idea that Issa is not happy about her life circumstances. She's not necessarily a huge fan of her job. She doesn't like how her relationship is going. She has been with Lawrence for about 5 years, and beginning at around year 3, it seems like, according to Kelly in season 2, seems that Lawrence and Issa were doing well in the first 2 years of their relationship. It seems like they got together very quickly soon after she came out of college. And so year 3 is when Lawrence had lost his job, is my understanding, or rather he had a company, it fell off or it fell through. And so he's basically unemployed in season 1. He's trying to get a job while also still trying to bring his app Whoop Whoop, back. Like, okay. So that's basically their main form of conflict. While we also see this is going on, Issa is looking elsewhere. She decides to try to rekindle something with a past high school fling, who is Daniel. And so when she does try to do that, and she ends up going to a comedy club, sort of like talent show as sort of event with Molly. She kisses Daniel. No, she doesn't kiss him. He kisses her, or they kiss each other. You decide. So they kiss, and Issa obviously, she suddenly gets into like her little frazzled self, and she's like, oh, I don't know if I guess our relationship. And then Daniel's like, what are you talking about? And it embarrasses her, causing her to really go back to her boyfriend, who she temporarily broke up with, because that's how she was trying to justify it. And then she reconciles with Lawrence. Things seem to be looking up, because Lawrence gets a job at Best Buy, and even though he hates it, it is better because their whole relationship problem really revolves around Lawrence being incredibly depressed, and him being demotivated a lot. And in being depressed, he is also not showing up in his relationship as much as he should be. So meaning that he is forgetting Issa's birthday. He is not really bringing her out on dates, just not being as present as he should be in their relationship. It's causing a lot of dissatisfaction and resentment building up in their relationship, because even though he has unemployment is not that much money. So Issa's basically carrying the entire household on her. She's carrying the emotional burden. She's carrying the financial burdens, like basically all of that. And she's not really getting anything out of the relationship at this point. She can't even get her boyfriend to remember her birthday. So things seem to temporarily be looking up. And then we have the video of Issa performing Broken Pussy. Yeah, found it. And that video gets put around, and of course Issa can't have that putting around, because not only does it affect her in terms of her job, but also it kind of reveals that she was at a place where she was not supposed to be to her boyfriend. And so in her attempts to try to get that video out of the internet, she meets with Daniel again, who was there at the event. He's obviously of no help, and they go back to his studio, they hang out, they have a heart-to-heart talk about her going off to college, which eventually led to them basically having distance between them because it seems like Daniel felt like Issa was going a whole different path than she was, and then that's why they're not able to be together, and that leads to them sleeping together. And yeah, so Issa does not come forward about her cheating to Lawrence. She tries to hide it. Again, things seem to be going together. The truth eventually gets revealed. We have that infamous not fight scene, but like their shouting session to each other, and basically they break up, and the season ends with, after they go away to the little, not necessarily a bachelorette, they went to, where'd they go? They went to Palm Springs, I think, together, like all the 4 girls. And Issa obviously wants to come back because finally Lawrence answers her text, and then she comes back to find the Best Buy shirt in the closet. Oh, so symbolic. Because of all the sacrifices he made, he got nothing out of it in return. And then we see Lawrence going at it with Tasha, the bank teller, that was all up on him. Season 2, and I'm going to stop here in season 2, is when we see them basically going through the aftermath of their breakup. And we basically see Lawrence try to, I guess, have a relationship, which was unwise to do. And Issa tries things with Daniel, or it seems that she is trying to come back from that decision, and it ends up leading with them realizing that the path that they're both going on is obviously not healthy. It's not going to really resolve anything, especially after their big fight towards the end of the season. And they come back together in the apartment, as Issa says, it's the rent had gone up and Issa's not able to afford the apartment at this point. And so she and Lawrence have, again, this talk, a very raw and open talk about how they both felt in the relationship, and it led to some really good reconciliation. It also helps us realize that Issa really wants to be with Lawrence, and we don't really know Lawrence's perspective on this, and they basically split from there on, and it seems like we'll never be able to see them together again until season 3, season 4, and finally season 5. So why do I think that these 2 characters were about to be together? Before I get into it, let me actually use a quote from Issa Rae herself and see what she thinks about how these 2 came together and why they decided to make that decision at the end of season 5. I have an interview session from her with Variety magazine. She's being interviewed by Angelique Jackson. The question was, to clarify, you decided Issa should pick Lawrence while filming season 5. And then her response was, even after determining to rewrite the existing finale, it was just like, I was still teetering. And then it was just like, this is what I want. And I've kind of been denying myself, and I've been making Issa deny what ultimately is her happiness and her choosing to be happy, like she discussed with Lawrence. One of the other things that one of our writers, co-executive producer, Laura Cottrell, brought up is just the idea that in season 4, we essentially set up the idea that Issa and Lawrence were soulmates. And by denying the chance for them to get together, we're basically saying that Issa doesn't deserve her soulmate, which is so antithetical to her victory and her going after what she wants. So that was also went into the final decision to make them end up together. Okay. So you feel how you feel about that. For me, I kind of disagree with the whole soulmate sort of thing, but that's just my own personal opinion on that. I'm not necessarily a spiritual person, being raised Christian and all, but I honestly think that the idea of soulmates or the idea that somebody, like one specific person, is like meant for you, especially when we talk about soulmates in the romantic sense. I understand soulmates in the case of like siblings and friendships and whatnot, but I think in terms of romantic sense, especially how we tend to center romance in our lives as a society, that it could oftentimes make people feel like they're unable to move on from a relationship because that person was their quote unquote soulmate when they probably weren't good for them. Because I feel like the idea of a soulmate, it should be a good choice for you, right? That's my idea. Now for me, when I first watched Insecure, I actually wanted Issa and Lawrence to be together. And then after watching it the second, third, and fourth time, I was basically growing against the idea because I realized how much these 2 characters had a good time while it lasted and probably needed to meet other people. But let's get to the point. Let's get to what I'm trying to say here. Okay, so one of the points that I had is they had a lot of time together. Breaking up that long-term relationship is a hard feat, despite both parties trying to go their separate ways. I mean, they just got a relationship after 5 years together. That's a legitimately long time. That's half a decade together. And so that's a lot of routine. That is a lot of like, you knew this person, like this, like knowing a person for 5 years, like that person is really close to you. You know a lot of intimate details about that person, and you are observant of them. You know how they walk, you know how they talk, you know their likes, you know their dislikes, you know the little quirks and whatnot. Like that's a person that was so important in your life. And in a way, I heard the statement said a lot, that when you break up with somebody, it's almost like mourning a death, because of how pivotal or how significant that person was in your life. So I think, first of all, that's a really hard thing to get over. And they were really trying to date very soon after, which I felt was so irresponsible. I felt like the two, however you want to break up is your prerogative. I just tend to feel like people should really take time to heal. And I don't know the timeline, I don't know the appropriate time to start dating again, but I feel like, especially with Lawrence, when he tries to get into a relationship, first of all, with Tasha, he tries to give her the semblance of a relationship, and even though he has no intention on committing to her, and then he also tries to have a relationship with his coworker Aparna, and he ends up replicating the same amount of jealousy that he had, or rather he is projecting his insecurities onto her, because he had just been cheated on, and he thinks that Aparna is cheating on him because what came to find out was that Aparna did sleep with a coworker of theirs, even though she has no romantic feelings towards him, the same way that he had felt towards Tasha. And so, like, my biggest grievance with Lawrence is he's a relationship guy. And so casual encounters are something he can do, but I feel like he has to give himself the idea that he is a nice guy all the time. And so he can't, which ends up with him just being not a nice guy. You know what Tasha said, right? You know the quote that Tasha said. Hopefully I can find it and insert in the video. Okay, so there's that. And also, I think for a breakup of this magnitude to be successful, they would have to have had a physical distance between them. Like, they have similar circles, they have similar friends, they basically have to see each other a lot against their own will. Like, in every single season after season 1, we basically see Lawrence and Issa always crossing paths with each other all the time. And one thing I noticed, that the music kind of changes a little bit whenever they see each other in the previous seasons, and I think that's basically what's driving this whole idea, this argument of them being soulmates, right? Because it seems like these two characters just have a cosmic connection between them. And I understand that for them to move, like, that's a significant thing to do, especially when it comes to the reason being a relationship. Like, I assume that moving obviously is not a easy decision to do, and so for any of them to get up and move would be a huge shift in their lives. But we do get to see that in season 4, because when Lawrence does go to San Francisco and Issa stays behind in LA, essentially that actually helps Issa move on. Like, she's able to just move on and try to continue her relationship with Nathan. And I think that distance was necessary for her to realize, like, hey, there are other men out here who can provide me the same amount of happiness that I found in this other person. So there's that. Another thing is, this is kind of like a commentary on sociological and race relations and whatnot, but my statement I'm about to say is this, that Issa and Lawrence are both some Black educated nerds, okay? And I think that, especially in this conversation that we are having about high value, low value, why do black men not go to college, black women being an educated population, blah, blah, blah. Like, I would expect a woman like Issa to have a certain standard in who she tends to date, and I also expect the same thing of Lawrence in a way. And I think what I'm trying to get at is that they're basically very compatible, and the reason why I mentioned their race and their education status is because I feel like their personalities are so specific to, like, their upbringing and their backgrounds that in order for these two characters to be somewhat compatible, that they would have to have some level of similar interests or similar quirks that allow them to work well with each other. I think their chemistry is palpable. Their love is demonstrated through knowledge of each other's interests. Like Lawrence remembers when Issa's birthday was, and he doesn't just let it slide in season 3. He actually does go out of his way to give her some candy for her to have. Talking about like the baby shower that they had, Tiffany's, Derek's baby shower. Like again, every time they come across each other, every time they talk, it's again, I could see that whole soulmate cosmic energy that they tend to have a lot with each other, because they just accept each other really basically 100%. They are accepting of their respective personality quirks. They're encouraging of each other's career pursuits and personal life choices. Lawrence encourages Issa to proceed with her block party ideas. I know this is, again, it's really small detail, like focus on the little small details, but I remember the one season where Lawrence tries to go to church. I think that was season 3. And he tries to go to church, and the church is also very corporate worship. And so like he's really trying his best to kind of like figure out like what he wants to do in terms of turning his life around, because he feels very stagnant and he knows like his job is trying to lay off people. So he's like very much like, I have no direction. So he tries to go to church. And when he's talking with Issa about this, Issa just gives him a very simple solution. She's just like, just choose another church. And you would think like, that's really simple, Joanne. Like, why is that so important to you? Because like, she just gets him, because he was really trying to find direction in his life. And then her just saying one simple thing, like really redirected him right back. Like that's what I'm really talking about. Like that chemistry is palpable. And maybe with all of this, I'm saying maybe that soulmate argument is starting to make sense. But I also think like there are a lot more concrete facts as to why these two came back together. Okay, now I do want to talk about Issa's other love interests. Okay, so here's the thing. I didn't like Daniel. I personally don't like Daniel. I feel like, I know some people like this relationship mainly because they like the actor who plays Daniel. Yeah, he's cute. But I think a character like Daniel would have held Issa back. It was not right for her to come and, sleep with him, given how things ended. It's not right for her to come and room with him. Like, I don't know why she decided to room with him. Like, based off how things ended in season 1, I think it was playing with his feelings. I think it was very ungenuine. Like, why did she decide to live with him specifically and not her brother or with Molly? And I do feel like in that moment when Issa was rooming with Daniel, it really showed not necessarily how much Issa needed Daniel. It showed how much Daniel needed her. And we do see like when she finally makes a breakthrough, right? She gets the apartment. She gets to be the landlord of that apartment. And she's still doing Uber or Lyft, whichever one she's doing. She's still doing the Uber and Lyft. And there's a point where they're at the laundromat and she's basically saying that like, she's about to move out essentially. And then when she says that, Daniel kind of brings in a little bit of doubt. He's saying like, oh, you think you're able to do that and also do like the Uber and the Lyft and still do Uber? And I just felt that was like a small little, like he really did not want her to go. And instead of him just owning up and saying like, I'm going to miss you a lot, or I know you're going to leave, but I really want to continue this connection that we're having. Just like being like full front on and honest, he basically tries to lower her a little bit by saying like, are you sure you can be able to handle those two jobs at the same time? Well, yeah, she can. And so there is that. And I don't blame Daniel for that. I think that it's really hard to express an emotion that you might not be fully aware of in the moment, but in doing so, he does end up inadvertently is trying to hurt or basically hold Issa back. And so that's why I was glad the relationship ended, because she needed to move on. She needed to make a transition. And that's also why I love season 3, because I call it the pivotal season. It's a pivot. She needs to make a pivot. Now, next thing about Nate. Okay, Nate could be seen as an example of right person, wrong time. I don't know if I really believe in that. I think Nathan was I hate to say it, a person that served his purpose for the time that she needed him. But in terms of being long term, I don't think it was going to work. And I think it's Issa's fault personally. I think when Nate and Issa do meet up, and again, I have to put a sidebar of the fact that Nate actually has bipolar disorder. I didn't like how the show handled it because I feel like it was a lot of blame put on him when bipolar disorder can be incredibly dangerous. When I say dangerous, what I mean is that it seems that Nathan seems to be, he flips between manic and, or in my opinion, it seems more like hypomanic episodes versus depression. And so, like, when I say dangerous, I mean it's not a disease, or it's not a psychological disorder where one has complete control of what's going on. I think people are very unaware as to what that person might be going through. And so the way that Issa kind of just like brushes it off, because Nate is not actually aware as to what he is going through, he's not able to have a safe space to really express the fact that, hey, it's not necessarily that he's happy one day and he's sad another. Like, nah, like he is probably not getting enough sleep. He is probably making really bad financial choices unwillingly, and then he's also probably thinking of harming himself. So I just didn't like that. But back to the main point. I think that Nathan at the time, he served a purpose in Issa's life. Like, he really was encouraging her to, like, hey, go to the thing. Like, he was kind of like her little Delulu, you know, encourager, but not really necessarily Delulu, but like take a risk sometimes, right? Like, you don't have to do things by the book all the time. Just take a risk, just like jump off, like you'll basically get to it. And so when their relationship prematurely ends in season 3, I think it just showed that, like, okay, that relationship was for its time. It wasn't meant to be something that was supposed to go on long term. I also think that Issa wasn't really being honest about her feelings with Nathan. I think Nathan had very, his boundaries were, I respect. At first, I used to think that Nathan was kind of like a quitter, like, oh, why can't he just, you know, stand for Issa in his relationship. But I think after watching it again, I was like, nah, Nathan just clocked it. He clocked what was going on. He didn't want to be with somebody who was unsure about him. He wanted to be with somebody who was sure about him.
Doing?
I don't know. I might be done with that barbershop.
Done? What you mean done?
I can't trust none of them people. It's always just too much drama. I don't know if sticking around for all this is worth it, you know? Maybe me and LA just ain't the right fit.
I told you I loved you, and we didn't even discuss it. Were you just never gonna acknowledge that?
Are you serious right now? You always trying to call me out for something.
Because you're always avoiding something. I mean, you said that you might leave LA, and I'm not supposed to have a reaction to that.
Oh, all right, so now this is all about you? You're not even gonna ask me what I'm going through?
I am. It's just, it feels like I made a choice to commit to this, and it sounds like you're not.
This is dumb. You know how I feel about you.
Then why are you being so defensive?
Because you telling me that I'm not committed. You the one that's been all inconsistent.
What does that mean?
It means you crying in my mouth one minute, then telling me that you want me the next minute, then you want to take things slow. Now you telling me you love me. What do you want from me? You all over the place.
You know what? Let's just drop it.
Going back to season 5, what actually ends up having season 5 is that Lawrence and Condola end up having the baby. And they're obviously co-parenting. Issa misunderstands this and thinks that Condola and Lawrence have come back together when that's not actually the case. And so at Derek and Tiffany's going away party, that's when Lawrence decides to do this whole, like, I'm talking about a different world, Dwayne's, like, grand gesture.
I was moving, but things are different now, and I'm different now. And, you know, I would hate to leave here tonight knowing that I didn't say something that I should have. Like, I didn't fight hard enough for you.
Lawrence, I don't know if fighting would have even mattered.
Right, maybe, I don't know, all right? But tonight, I want you to know how I feel, and I don't want to...
Here? Because I can't do this with you right now.
Are you happy right now?
What?
Are you happy, yes or no? Because I realize that I am not happy when I'm not with you. Because I love you, Issa.
What's all this?
Oh, I was just taking out trash.
Nah, we were having a conversation.
No, we weren't.
Yes, we were.
What the fuck you doing,
Let's
bro?
go.
Calm down,
Nathan.
man. We was just
Nathan.
talking.
I'm calm, but I could go up.
Bro, you keep trying to walk in my space.
Oh, stop. You got
Been had
Stop
problems.
it.
All right, so
Nathan,
we been had
stop.
problems. Let's go. Hey,
Let's go, bro.
Nathan.
Let's go. Hey, let's go. Let's go. I'm chill.
So what Kathleen Newman Bremen, what she says is that this grand gesture here is Issa's speech she gives at the very end of the series. And I guess Lawrence's decoration at the party. You know, I am not Lawrence Hive. For many seasons, I have not been able to stand this man. But I love a good romantic speech, and I thought Issa gave a really good speech. I don't love that it wasn't Lawrence putting his heart on the line and throwing the Hail Mary at Issa, instead of the other way around. Think about the penultimate episode when Lawrence's friend Chad was like, yo, you never fight for anything in your effing life. Fight for this. I'm paraphrasing. Aside from declaring his love in the middle of an effing party while her boyfriend Nathan was there, he didn't fight. And now in this grand moment, Issa, who is the one that's being like, okay, let's do this, and Lawrence just gets to be there and accept it. I like it as a gesture for Issa, but I don't like that Issa's the one making a gesture, especially in this relationship, because Lawrence has done nothing and continues to do nothing to make this relationship work. Like Chad said, Lawrence just lets life happen to him, but like he's on the dock of the bay. Not to agree with the goofiest character on the show, but Chad's right, and Lawrence is doing the exact same thing here. And that's honestly how I felt. And with that, I'm just going to go into how I feel about Lawrence, right? I think that Lawrence seemed like he was progressing, but then he regressed. He showed incredible insight towards the end of season 2, was able to admit his role in the relationship. He, like Issa, also tries to find his footing in season 3. I think that his relationship with Condola brought up some old skeletons. I personally feel like Condola's actions or words toward him during Thanksgiving showed a lack of transparency, because it seemed like Lawrence had thought that they were in a serious relationship. It seemed like Condola wanted something a lot more casual. I was just like, y'all don't talk? Anyways, it seems that they needed a more serious conversation about the trajectory of the relationship. That didn't seem to occur. I'm like, y'all didn't talk about long-term goals, y'all didn't talk about marriage, y'all didn't talk about kids. I understand that certain conversations are better fit for like later down the line, but I'm like, y'all didn't even have like mentioned that, especially since she's divorced. And also she decides to have the baby. So I'm just like, what's going on? Like, making decisions off the fly, but that's just me. But Condola has asked a very important question. If Issa had not cheated, would Lawrence have stayed? Yes, he would. That's my response to that. And why? And that's also a thing I really have about maybe my issues with love, is that like, or things about how love is portrayed. One thing I think a lot about romance shows don't really talk about is why do these characters like each other. And I did give, some explanation as to, I honestly think it's sort of like a racial, sociological lens or influence on that, the fact that they are two black nerds who are also I just think that you tend to go for people who are sort of a reflection of who you are too. Not all the time. I know that's not the case for everybody, but it's like what you see in yourself, you try to find it in other people a little bit, or you try to find people who are very similar to you in that respect. So that was my understanding of that. Also, it brings up the question, did Lawrence properly heal from Issa? And I don't think he did either. I thought he did, but then Lawrence has like very dysfunctional healing tendencies. I think that he's very much a relationship guy, and I think because he is a relationship guy, I really think that he really needed to maybe take a second and honestly ask himself, like, what is he looking for? Like, what does he value? What is he trying to replicate? I don't know. What is he aiming for, right? Because I'm like, why would you date Condola, who doesn't want the same things as you? Like, was this not a conversation that you had, that you just see a pretty woman and thought, oh, I should date her and give her a chance? Like, why not have these serious conversations a lot sooner than later? But that's what I'm saying. Also, Lawrence does not understand the extent of parenthood. I understand Condola's stance actually a lot, because she ended up having to do most of the child rearing. She knows the kid's allergies. She knows his health stuff. She basically sees him growing up every single day. He gets to fly in from San Francisco to LA every now and then, or once a week. And in doing so, he only gets like little bits and pieces of time with his son. And so it actually shows some progression when Lawrence does come back to stay in LA, because he's able to realize like he has to be an active father. And I also want to say that that his pursuit of Issa was poorly executed in the end of the show. It came off as possessive. A contrast to how we used to view these interactions. Despite the reconciliation, it requires a more civil conversation, also respected boundaries, not constant calling and showing up. Like Loki, was Loki kind of stalking her? Just a tad. Like, it was just a lot of like him being very persistent. I will admit, and I will make a promise or something. That's just me. But based on what I just said, all of that, I think Lawrence still needed some growing to do before they can reconcile. I wouldn't say that getting back together was the right choice, but it's a choice I can see why people make. So with all of this I just said, I'm not justifying this relationship at all. I'm just saying that there are certain conditions that allows or that pushes people to getting back together, right? And a lot of the stuff I just talked about are things that I feel like a lot of people have probably experienced themselves. There is familiarity in there, and the respective characters went their separate ways, and the issues present were fixable. Like, it was just very fixable. One person needs to get a job. Some people need some self-confidence. Like, people needed to do what they always wanted to do all their lives. People needed flexibility. People needed money. So these are very fixable problems. So I can understand why they would end up getting back together. These are not two people opposed in values or morals. Like I said, they're very close or very similar to one another. Two college educated Black adults, similar ideals and interests. So like I feel like there's just a lot of tangible reasons why they still get back together. And at the end of the day, it's a choice. It's not a choice that you have to make. You don't have to get back with your ex, but it's a choice that some people end up making because of how they view the trajectory of the relationship. They feel like this is something that they want to invest in. Going back to what Kathleen had said, she also says, like, I would not want to love like this because there is too much water under the bridge. As much as I do believe that Issa and Lawrence love each other and are in love with each other, I think if either one of them had that feeling with anybody else, they would be with someone else. I like that. I do believe you can have that deep love feeling with more than one person. So if either Issa or Lawrence had that feeling with anyone else, they wouldn't be with each other. The only reason they're with each other, I think, is because they are just chasing this feeling that they only had with each other, which again brings up my previous point of why I think that, like, if they gave each other time and really got to know other people, maybe moved away, then it'll probably be less likely for them to get back together. But yeah, like I said, they're just really tangible reasons why they got together. I don't think there's any sort of cosmic soulmate sort of connection. I just think that people tend to be together based off of proximity, based off of similar interests, based off of similar values. And even though Issa did cheat, I think that, like, if it's not something like a huge pattern, if it's something that somebody does not feel like it's too bad of a thing to break up over, then there is a chance of reconciliation there. So that's not on that. With that being said, media literacy is important. We don't have to replicate the messages we see in shows or from other people. There are people with similar stories, whether it be infidelity, financial inequalities, resentment. Relationships are hard work. For some people, they might need time apart to reconcile. For others, they might need to go their separate ways entirely. Definitely do not settle for things that are not aligned with you. Do not settle for someone who does not reciprocate your feelings, makes you feel less than, or limits your dreams or aspirations. But relationships are not always highs. I think what causes relationships to continue is a mutual commitment to one another, which I think is what Issa and Lawrence had. Not really done out of obligation, like the idea you just want to be married, you just want to tell people you're with someone, you're doing it for the kids, but truly because this is the person you want to do life with. So with that being said, that really ends it off. Bring up this other thing. Sorry, not to end off this video like this, but it does bring up one question I have, which is this the most that we can get our relationships, right? Is this what relationships are all about? Like, do we really have to, when it comes to accepting people's flaws and shortcomings, is this what it really looks like? And from what I've seen, it pretty much is what it looks like. But I do have hope that this is not the story of everybody. I mean, I also want to shortly bring up Tiffany and Derek, because they do have like this one little hint, I guess in season 1, where it seemed like they did have a little scuffle or whatever in their relationship, but they don't talk about it publicly. So we actually don't know what happens in their relationship because they don't talk about it. So that, once again, like, what do people tolerate in their relationships? Is Issa and Lawrence's relationship a lot more common than one might think? Is that the only choices that we have? Are those the only conditions that we have in our relationships, right? Like, you could have an opinion like Kathleen and still end up compromising or making certain adjustments when it comes to relationships, you know? And also, at what point do you say that enough is enough, especially if the person has not done anything damning like cheating or abuse or whatnot? Like, at what point do you say, like, hey, this relationship is not serving me? And at what point do we actually, as a society, come to accept the fact that everybody is compatible? There are certain things that just, you know, there's certain things that just cause a relationship to dissolve, and it's honestly okay. Breakups are okay. But yeah, with that, I'm gonna reiterate my last statement. Write your own story. Not everybody has to agree with it. Okay, bye.
Do you believe it'll work out?
I'm okay with finding out.